Hi, Rikke. So, I am so happy to see you here today. This is Rikke Tiana, and she is a Danish actress with quite an amazing, but also a very kind of somber background story. It's really something that could be taken right out of a Hollywood thriller. Um, and that's probably also why you are actually thinking about maybe writing your story into
Yes.
a script and make a film about it, because it is really quite amazing, all the things you have gone through and from such an early age. So I really wanted you to be here today and talk to us and tell us your story, and because both of us think that this is something that could possibly help other girls in the same situation, or in similar situations, and also just shed some light um, on these stereotypical images that we often have of women in certain situations. We're going to go into that, and just kind of break through that and show everyone that there are actually people with real feelings behind, and there are reasons why you end up in certain situations.
Yeah.
So I think that's like a key word for us today, or a key phrase for us today. It's kind of to look at these stereotypical images and break them up and change them. And as this project or series of talks is called Changing the Narrative. So let's try and change the narrative today. But why don't you explain us a little bit about yourself? You are now an actress, but
Yeah.
how did you start?
Oh, how did I start? My dreams about being a big star started when I was, I don't know, as long as I can remember, maybe 4 or 5 years old, standing singing some kind of sing star it's called today, with dresses and performing, and I had I had these big dreams of being famous and people loving me and looking at me and just thinking I was amazing. And I think that maybe these needs and this hunger for recognition came because I'm a ginger, and I was as a child I was fat. I had Dumbo ears. I had freckles. I was all the things that wasn't at that time seen as pretty. I wasn't this stereotype, is it called that?
Yeah, the stereotypical image
Yeah,
of
stereotypical image of
what is a sexy or beautiful girl,
sexy,
right?
it was beautiful, and I thought that to be a big star you had to be skinny, probably blonde, and probably when you grew older, I don't know, I was a little child that age, I didn't know, but you had to be the best. You had to be skinny, you had to be perfect, you had to have boobs and blonde hair, and you have to look like the girls I saw in my class get all the lead roles in the school theater and musicals and stuff like that. And I was just, well, I'm too ugly. And I was told that, actually. You're not really the type. Actually, my first role was I had to play a boy. And I had that in 2 pieces because, I don't know, that was just so, and I practiced and I practiced. I really tried, but never really made it there. I had some private complications that how am I supposed to explain this? Family stuff that definitely didn't make this easier for me, because I felt like a nobody, and I started, I worked so hard to be better and to be skinny, and I didn't want to eat food because I thought that maybe if I was skinny I was pretty, and I
And
said,
around what age did that start?
the thing about hating myself.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe it was I was when I was 8 years old,
Wow.
I
That's
think.
so early though. It's amazing that you already at that time had like that you were conscious about whether you were good looking or not.
I was, and that's because I was one of the youngest in my classroom, and I always connected better with people who was elder than me. And because I was so-called a pretty smart child, so I got the get, you go to school and you get books. I got the books from the upper grades because I was fast. So I kind of connected with the people when I was up picking up books that were elder than me, and I saw these girls getting roles in the school theater, and they were pretty, they were 4 years older than me, but I didn't see that. I just saw that I'm a little girl, I want to be like them because boys like them, and some of them also told me sometime that she has those big dreams about being a movie star and a singer, and I was like, I want to do that too. And she told me that you kind of have to change them because you don't, I got this information as well, and I uh, yeah, I was very observative. I had my radars, out here, and I've always loved observing people and looking, and been maybe social observative, social intelligent. I'd say, if you could say that about yourself. I thought I've always been that, and maybe I was 8 when I started hating myself and stopped. I wrote songs to MJP, to Grand Prix. Grand Prix. That sounds.
It's called the Eurovision in English. Yeah.
Yeah.
For the children's version, right?
Yeah, and I wrote songs, I wrote stories, I had.
So you were really you were very much looking for that attention. You were hating yourself at one point, and at the same time kind of putting yourself out there because you wanted the attention.
I tried, and I remember I had these Bratz stalls, these old Barbie dolls, and we were sitting some girls playing into some child birthday party, and we played famous. We played on stage, and we played with these Bratz dolls, and I was always had to have the ugly one, and I was always like have to play the background thing, and I was so tired of never being seen and never being heard and stuff like that. So in a quite early age, I started becoming very self-destructive. To begin with, it was just in my head, telling me that I was ugly, I was stupid, I was all these things. I have had lots of private stuff going on in my private life, my family life. That was definitely horrible as well to experience as a child.
But this kind of pushed you into a place from a pretty early age of, am I right in saying that you started with drugs, or how did you get into everything that's...
to the drug environment? I guess that was actually...
Or did you start your transformation before you started drugs? Because you went through a transformation. We see you now with this beautiful red hair, so cute. And then I want to comment on a photo that you sent to me earlier. And it was from that time, around when you were 13, 14, maybe around that time. And I couldn't recognize you. I didn't know who it was. I had to ask you, but is this you? Because you were with, I'm going to describe the photo. So you were with very long, I guess, hair extensions, completely blonde, full makeup, and
eyebrows, eyebrows sitting like up here, like in some tree thing.
Exactly.
Oh.
And what I can assume was like a lot of push-up bras to make your breasts look huge.
4 or 5 of them. Yeah.
Right. And very tanned and in lingerie. And when you told me the age of that photo, I couldn't believe it, because you look like an adult. Well, almost. I mean, you can see that you're a minor, but obviously, looking at that and then comparing to what we see today is a complete transformation. So did that happen first, or did that happen after you got into drugs?
Before the drugs and the alcohol and the crime gang environment stuff we talked about, it did. It actually, I guess my life with the drugs and the crime and the things I've been through in that environment came after that, because I started, I started hating myself so much, and I saw that what I saw was that the girls who got the attention were the sexy ones. I was a bit older then, maybe I was 10 or something, 11, and I saw that the girls who got the attention, they look like, sex objects and stuff like that. And I thought that if I'm just getting seen, if someone would just see me, I stopped caring about what people saw me as. I just wanted to be seen, and that's quite dangerous because I still had dreams, but I was so desperate. And what I did was, I might have been 12 then, maybe I was, I don't know, but I dyed my hair blonde, as you told me. I got those long extensions, like 4 push-up bras, boobs over here, eyebrows over here, and when you look the way I did, you attract certain people. And unfortunately, the people I attracted were these elder men who definitely wanted to take advantage of my desperation, and I ran away from home, and lots of times I did that, and stayed with these older.
Because you got into a gang environment.
Yeah, I did.
Right?
I did, yeah.
And how did you even get into, I mean, and again, we're talking about you being what, 12, 13 years old?
I was maybe 14 when I got into gang environments, yeah.
Okay.
I had a false ID and a false passport because I had to, I got into clubs. I like jumped out the window at night from my parents' house, and I went to the city and dressed all up and got all the attention from these men, and I thought that this was amazing. But I think it started, I went for a so-called audition. This was a totally fake guy telling me that I met him at a party, and then he told me that if I wanted to be a star, he could help me. He could do these things for me. And I went to this audition, and I got raped for the first time. And God. That was when I lost my virginity. So my relationship to men and sex and love, or so to say, was pretty twisted in a young age. So
and that happened at the audition?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
It did. Because he promised me that I was hating myself in my life so much at that time, also caused by the private problems that I'm sorry I can't tell you about right here, but I just wanted a new life and a new me, and he told me that he saw something in me, and that was, I just wanted to hear that. So he said that if I passed this audition, I could go to another country. I think it was London or Paris, that doesn't matter. So he would get me a flight ticket, and then I could get a big career as a star. So but I got raped, and this rape were filmed, and I was
really,
yeah, and I was the first rape that it happened 2 or 3 times that evening. And the first rape wasn't filmed, but the third one was, I kind of just stopped reacting because I was kind of in shock. And this one got filmed, and he kind of threatened me before I left. I left the building without my purse, without everything, and he met me by the stairs and ran after me and told me that what happened here isn't. I guess short of it is I just didn't want these things to come out. I didn't want my parents to see. I was embarrassed. I thought that it's a totally cliche to say, this is my own fault. I'm so stupid. I believed in him. Why didn't I hit him? Why didn't I do this thing? So I didn't saw this as a rape because I didn't do anything. I was just crying, I wasn't hitting him. I was just, laying and just crying. And you can probably see these stuff at that, some tape somewhere.
So he basically filmed this, and then afterwards threatened you to use these tapes so that you wouldn't go and tell anyone.
Yeah, because he knew that I wanted this star career, and he said that that if I wanted this career, if these things came out, I would never be a big star, because nobody wanted to work with someone who was just so cheap, and I was a slut, and I was lots of that, and I didn't know anything about sex. You know, as I told you, this was when my virginity was taking.
Yeah.
This is.
Can we just take a minute to dive into this, because I am sick and tired of hearing about victim blaming and how it's girl's own fault, and how you then afterwards need to be ashamed of what has happened to you. I mean, this was an abuse. This was someone attacking you. And just because you are not able to react in the moment because of shock, like people go into shock. That's exactly what you do when you are in the state of shock. You need to be able to react. So what is this? Like, how can you blame someone from being attacked by another person? And then on top of it, he's filming it and threatening you afterwards. And on top of it, you're a minor. So excuse me, not only is this rape, it's illegal. It's illegal. Well, it's illegal because it's rape, but it's also illegal because it's sex with a minor. Yeah. It's just, well, mind-blowing. And I want to also share with you an experience of mine, because maybe that can really illustrate how common this problem is. Now, I was never raped, so I'm very lucky and grateful for that. However, I was also at some point a young teenager who was, looking for attention. And I think most of us girls, what we're being told by society and what we experience as very young teenagers is that we have to look good, and we have to be sexy, and we have to attract men. And so you're kind of indoctrinated with that thing in your head, and that's what you're seeking. And so very often these photographers that are offering you photo sessions, or come to me, I'm going to take pictures of you. I never ever had a dream of becoming a model or an actress. I always wanted to be a film director. I wanted to be behind the camera. But even so, I did actually go to a kind of, it wasn't an audition, it was just a photo session where a photographer would take photos of you, and then they would evaluate and see if they could use the photos for something, and they would just give you the photos. And I thought, oh, this would be nice, I could go and get free photos taken. So I did that, thinking that, this was just like a normal thing to do. And there was another girl, we were two girls, right? And it was the most dodgy place. And we had to go into a basement. And at some point, this photographer asked us to take off our clothes. And I was like, excuse me? This was not supposed to be a naked photo shoot. This was supposed to be like a modeling photo shoot. Yeah. And so I actually refused it, but the girl did it. And we kind of took turns on the photo session. So when she got out of the room, she told me, and she said, yeah, no, I took off my clothes. I said, what? You got photographed naked? Yeah, no, it's not such a big deal. And I saw it in her eyes. She was not happy about it. She wasn't. But she kind of pretended like, yeah, no, it wasn't a big deal. I have no idea where those photos are now. This was obviously just a big scam, and this was all to get us to take off our clothes, and for them to take photos of God knows what they're going to use. I mean, what they've used the photos for. I might as well have said yes and taken off my clothes at that time. I'm just trying to, share this experience and let people know how often this actually happened. It's not the first time it happened to me. I've had other photographers come up to me and offer me photo sessions.
I've had, like, seriously, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
I think I met 4 girls, 2 of them, my very good friends, who 2 of them did it, and two of them didn't go to those auditions or photograph sessions to become a model thing. But it isn't uncommon, you get, I still get weird messages from creeps. I'm sorry, but they are, and that's total. And thank you for sharing that. I think it's so important to talk about this because, you know, we were easy victims as well. It's so easy, you know, you see a minor, as you call it, a very young girl or child, being desperate, and you know, have dreams, and you promise lots of stuff, and it's just easy, you know. It's
And we have to stop. I mean, I get really angry when I hear adults judging young people, teenagers especially, and people in their early 20s, because, I mean, let's face it, the brain is not even fully developed until you're around 25. So a lot of things are going on, and you're just kind of learning how to navigate society and life in general. And you're obviously, because your hormones have started, and you know, when you become a teenager, and so you're obviously very curious about sex, but at the same time you have no experience, and it's not okay for adults to take advantage of that, because they obviously have years of experience and you know, knowledge about it, and they know their boundaries, and kids, because they are still kids at that age, they don't have that. So it's a completely unbalanced relationship.
Totally.
And yeah, and that's why I think, you know, adults, they really do have a responsibility of, even if a 15 or 16-year-old girl, because I can't remember exactly when is the age of consent in Denmark. I know it's 18 in the States, so that's quite high, but in Denmark I think it's way lower.
Yes, it's 16 here in Denmark, I guess.
Okay, but you know, even if you're 16 and you're going to have sex with an older man, of a 30-year-old man, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense in my head. There'll always be an imbalance there, and there'll always be someone who is able to take advantage.
And they're typical elder. They're typical elder. They might be 45, 50 plus. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
It's not even, and that might doesn't matter, but when, yeah, you attract certain people, and then you think about it, it's your own fault, and yeah, just, I'm sorry I interrupted you. Just yes.
No, not at all. I mean, I'm the one of interrupting you.
No.
I just felt like I wanted to share that story as well, to say that how easy and how quickly it can turn from one thing to another, and you know, and we're talking about really, really young girls who don't have the experience, and who do have hormones, and who are curious. And you know, teenagers are known for taking risks, and they don't have that well in the brain. It's not developed enough, that place of thinking about consequences, and you know, not taking risks like that, being more careful. And also because you haven't experienced the world yet. So when a photographer says to you, come, I will take some pictures of you, you're going to get those pictures for free afterwards, you pretty much believe that person, because you've never been in that situation. So you're
quite naive,
right
know?
You don't think about the things that can go wrong. You unfortunately experience them, and then you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but what happened, Rikke, I'd like for you to also maybe touch on a little bit about your life at the time when you got involved with gangs, because it's a very, very rough environment. And I believe you were also a teenager when you got into that environment, right?
14, my 15 maybe, when I was all in.
Yeah. And how did that happen? Was that simply because you had this kind of transformation, and you maybe started hanging out with the quote unquote wrong people, and got invited to parties and stuff?
Yeah. I remember I had a friend, and she's always been, my parents always told me that she's been, you know, bad company kind of friend. But when so I kept distance. But when I started to look like you know, I became a child sex object. So I posted pictures, and I blocked my parents everywhere so they couldn't see it. But of course they found it when it came all over. And but I started to get in contact with her again, and she was a part of the gang environment. She was selling at the time videos and sex videos and sex tapes and sugar dating and stuff like that for the men in the gang environment. And she brought me to this party at some gang club in Denmark actually, and um, I went there, and I remember some big pumped up guy. He walked towards me, and he was like, "You don't belong here." And I was like, "What do you mean? I'm totally comfortable." I wasn't at all. I was scared as hell. You know, I was standing there with my corset, and she styled me to look like a total porn star, and I was just standing there shaking at the bar, watching those big gang members and people, those women, I talked to you about that before, those women sitting around those tables with these gang members. I looked at them, and I remember I thought that poor women, they're totally slaves of this. They were just sitting as trophies, sex trophies for these men, and taking drugs, and like I thought that they were wasting their lives, and I promised myself that I'm never gonna be like them. But it turned out, you know, I became like them. I thought that they were stupid or came from bad environment. I have to say I have an amazing family. We had our things and stuff, but now I'm very blessed to have an amazing family. So I'm definitely not gonna judge them for the way I chose to live my life in my teenage years. But I went to this one party, and this guy who told me I didn't belong there, I got his contacts for some reason, because I was hitting off from home. I took off, ran around the window. I was standing with my back. So he offered me a place to sleep, which was in the basement of this gang club. And then I kind of moved in, and then I started to be a part of these things, and I observed meetings, and I drove around for them, transported things from A to B, and I didn't even have a driver's license there. I was young. I just had my false ID, and I did all these things. So I became a criminal in a pretty early age, and then I started dating 1, 2, 3 of these men. You know, I met lots of people, but I've got abused as well in this environment, and I started. Because I was raped the first time I was 6, I think that's why my relationship with sex and men wasn't healthy. So I was offered drugs, cocaine, for example, one of the drugs. And I kind of felt that if I could just take all this cocaine, I could do it. I could make it through this sex act. I couldn't have sex without lots of alcohol, lots of cocaine, and I was partying every day. I was totally messed up all the time, just doing things I never had done today. I can't even recognize the little girl, the minor I was that time. I was totally abused and totally took an advantage of, because I was an easy victim. So I just hang around these different gangs and different criminal groups, and was used as a sex object for lots of years in there.
And did you feel like you became one of those women that you had seen in the beginning, and that you had been so judgmental to, actually?
I don't know about those women, but I saw myself actually in the same club couple of years after, maybe 4 years after. I saw myself in the actually same couch I was looking at some years ago, looking at those women, looking at them thinking, oh my God, I was so judgmental. I think you're stupid, you're sluts, you're so whatever. I was sitting in the same couch 4 years after, doing drugs, taking cocaine, became a total addict and a criminal, as one of the not many women in the gang environment become criminals. You know, they don't, because they're just women. They're just sluts. But
so I'm sorry, I'm gonna interrupt you. So let's just for the viewers here, let's break down this whole gang environment thing. So what is the function of the women in a gang, and what is the function of the men? And I just want to ask you, you don't have to say what gang, but are we talking like Hells Angel Bandidos kind of gangs? Are those
Uh,
the type of gangs?
I can't tell you that.
Right.
I can't tell you that. But
Okay.
the um
But
it's
they're criminal gangs.
they're criminal gangs. They're criminal gangs. I worked for them for a couple of years, and I've seen lots of cruel things that lots of the women in the gang environment definitely haven't seen, because the typical woman, as you ask for in the gang environment, is she's a trophy, she's a sex object, she's a trophy sitting beside the man, attracting customers to the bars, so they pay. There might be strippers, and nothing wrong with that, but that's quite that's the usual function for a woman in the gang environment. Not many women take so much part in the environment, or is even allowed to do the crime themselves, because women are looking very much they're
Yeah, they're looked down upon. They're not
they're looked
on.
down upon. They're looked down upon. Women are like, they're nothing, and they're in there for trophies and sex and stuff like that. As I said, they're not a part of the business. But I at some point got allowed to be that. Maybe because I was, I don't know, I wanted to be respected, but I got so caught up in the whole revenge thing about these men. So that was quite what messed my whole life up.
And what is that? Explain about that. The revenge is because you were abused and raped by them, and you kind of was looking.
No.
No?
I never been raped for one of the members in these clubs, but I were oh. It's so hard to sit here and tell you about this, because I really have to take care of myself for safety and stuff.
Of course. You don't have to tell us anything. Like, you only answer the things you can, of course.
Yeah, it was never the gang members who did this to me for those years, but if I hadn't been in that environment, it wouldn't have happened.
But you obviously had a lot of anger to men in general, because you had been raped at the time by.
I guess I feel like I've been let down. I fell in love with a man from the environment, and I thought that he was the love of my life. He got into jail, and in an awful case for murder attempt, and I gave up my whole life to support him and stuff, and we lived this. It was a toxic relationship, but I couldn't be in it, and I've actually never been in a relationship after that, because I am still working on some things to have a healthy relationship to sex and stuff like that, because in those 13 to 20 men, I'm 24 now, until I was 20, that's 7 to 8 years. I haven't had sex one time without being drunk or being totally messed up by cocaine and stuff like that. So it's very hard to me to get the trust back, and that's so cliche saying that, oh, I'm never trusting men again. And it's not like I hate men, but I was so filled up. There are so many things I wish I could tell you that I simply can't. But
That's okay, Regan. That's okay.
yeah,
You don't have to tell us everything. I think it's already amazing how honest you are about what has happened to you. Like I said in the beginning, it sounds like something out of a Hollywood thriller, everything that you were exposed to at such a young age. Because again, we're still, like, everything that you're talking about right now, we're still talking about a teenager here.
Yeah.
You're so young, and it takes so much courage to, you know, sit here and talk about all these things, because many of these things are things that society are already you know, trying to shame you for. You looked a certain way, you sat on that same couch, as you said, at the gang parties, right, with those women that to you looked like cheap whores. And that's
Yeah.
and that's also what we talked about in the beginning, about these stereotypical images that we have. Why is it that we look at these women and think they're whores? Because they look a certain way and because they have sex with the men. Well, excuse me, the men also have sex with them, and the men also look a certain way. You know, they're all pumped up with their tattoos and everything, and nobody looks at the men and think of them as cheap or whores or anything like that. You know, that's all on the women.
That's just stupid. It's just stupid.
It is, but it's such a big part of our society. I think, you know, any women will recognize that and think back of when they were young, or maybe they're going through it right now. I mean, I can even say when I was a teenager, I told you this before, we didn't have Facebook and social media, and we didn't have all that social media pressure that young women have today. But still, there was this image of, or story of, women have to be constantly sexy and good looking, and you have to attract men. And you know, I remember all these things that you heard from your guy friends when they were talking about women. You picked up on that. You know, you picked up on, what is it that guys want? Well, they want girls with big boobs. They want them to be clean shaven. They want them to look a little bit like a porn star. They want this, they want that. And so you feel as if that's what you have to give them. And then as soon as some girls go in that direction, immediately they're you know, labeled as whores or cheap, or, you know, whatever words we can come up with, while men are doing exactly the same thing, and they have all the freedom to do it without being labeled. And so it's such an old story, I think, and it's something that really needs to be changed. And also another thing is, when you're having sex at such an early age, because I understand that the men you had sex with were much, much older than you. So not only were you a minor, you were also having sex with older men. There is an obligation for adults to take care of children. And I realize that, you know, we're talking about a gang environment and people who are already criminals, but in general, it's not okay to normalize that men of such, like, older age than you are having sex with you. It's not okay. And I get really angry when I see films like, now I've never seen this film, but I know the synopsis, or I know the story, and it's called Manhattan, and it's the film directed by Woody Allen. And it's about a guy in his 40s that's having a relationship with a minor, you know, and it's being normalized in the film, and they're dating, and it's just like, and actually today that would be illegal, because the age of sexual consent in the States is 18. So that's actually illegal today. So I think this whole thing, and we forget how powerful films are, and anything that's visual, so like commercials, and but also books, I mean storytelling in general, right? Like the stories that we tell and we expose society of are so important and so powerful to tell you how things are supposed to be or not, and how to normalize things that are not supposed to be normal.
Yeah.
You know, an adult is supposed to take care of you. He's supposed to make sure that you don't get into relationships like that. And he's supposed to realize that here's a lost girl and she's not, you know, this is okay. You can say, yeah, you could have just ran away, or you could have just taken different choices. Yeah, but now when we've heard you talk about your story and tell us that you actually came from a family that, you know, with some conflicts, which made you crave for attention, which made you go through this whole transformation, which then attracted some bad people in your life, which then attracted drugs and alcohol and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden you have another picture of this girl, right? You have a picture of someone
and
you feel sorry for. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I think that what people don't really understand is that, you know, like, one decision can totally change your life. It's not like I never made a decision with myself, but I want to become an addict. I want to become a whore. I want to become you know, it's not like I signed up for that. I didn't knew I did, but it's so small decision based on your human needs. You know, if I needed recognition or I wanted people to see me, I took on this clothes. And if I went to this party, these people would see me. It was not like I didn't see the whole picture, because I don't know, when I started hating myself 8 or something. And then I was, you know, it's so ridiculous because you don't know what you go into. You don't know these things. You're not smarter than that, of course, because you haven't lived that long. So I didn't know that maybe my one stupid decision about got half naked pictures taken of me would take that turn. Or because if I knew that, I've never done it, even in that age. If I knew that going to this party could start 7 years of totally fast lane drugs, sex, alcohol, whatever comes with it. And when I woke up, we talked about my overdose and stuff like that. I overdosed, and I woke up like looking at my mom and thinking that, you know, this is it. Never again. I'm never gonna disappoint any people. And if, you know, if I've always loved my family. If I've seen as a 10-year-old or something, if I could see 10 years forward, me looking at myself in the hospital bed, looking at my mom, which life I've been ruining for so many years. It's not just myself, you know, living with that's, you know, that thought about it was so awful. That was a long story, but I didn't know, you know, every small decision led to something, and I didn't know that. So one decision can basically change your life and change the way that people look at you, and you lose the respect. People don't respect you anymore.
It's like a domino effect, right? It's
totally
like
totally domino effect. Yeah.
And it's kind of hard to stop that while you're in the middle of it, right? Because it just goes.
Yes, it's just your life, you know.
So you had an overdose, and that was kind of rock bottom for you. I can imagine that was when everything then changed. And when did this happen? How long time ago is this?
My overdose was 4 years ago.
4 years ago. So it's still quite recent for you, all these experiences, right? That's why I think
3 or 4, I think 4 years ago. And that was just, you know, as you say, that was rock bottom. I felt that these years I've been wasting, so to say, on totally stupid things. You know, I looked at my mom and she was like, you know, she was devastated. And I realized, well, she's been like that. I haven't seen it that way because it was totally far out. But I felt so bad about myself. I felt like, you know, I lost so many friends and lost contact with family. I lost respect. I lost myself. I was, you know, then I started hating myself again. But instead of going back to drugs and alcohol, I started writing. And then I decided that I can't get these years back of my life, but maybe I can use them for something. Maybe I could do something with them, because then it haven't been a waste like that.
Yeah.
So So that's why I started writing stories, and I went to acting school and stuff like that.
Yeah, because you just graduated, right, from the Actors Academy in Denmark. That's amazing. Congratulations. That to me is so amazing, because for you it must be such a huge accomplishment. It's like a complete turnaround of your life, right? And but it's still going in that direction that you wanted from when you were a child. You wanted to become an actress, right? That was your big dream, and now you're going after it, but in a healthy way.
In a healthy way. And I think that I feel like I owe that child, that Rikke, I don't know, that Rikke small child. I think I promised her so many things. I promised when, we're gonna do this together, and I feel like I have to keep up with what I promised that little girl once. And I feel good about myself for doing this, because things are starting to go, great. And I'm very blessed for, being alive first, but I'm very, very blessed to get to experience life in the way I'm experiencing it now, because I get to write stories, meet amazing people, so inspiring people. I graduated as an actress. I never thought that would even be possible for me. So, and I accepted that the fact that we're not perfect, maybe that can actually make us more perfect, because we don't have to be in any kind of way. And young girls they don't have to look a certain way. That makes it all more beautiful. They just have to, know their worth. That's maybe what's it all about, know their worth.
So what do you think about when you go on Instagram and you see all these very young girls exposing themselves in a certain way that maybe reminds you a little bit about what you did? What feelings, what do you feel? Do you wish you could, call them up and say, hey, don't do this?
Yeah, I do. I actually do. And there are so many young girls, and I was like, oh, maybe they aren't so extreme as I was, but it's still the sex and bikinis, and I was like, yeah, stop, please stop, because it doesn't have to go as bad as my it doesn't have to be that bad. Maybe it's just a phase for 1 year, and then everything is gonna be fine, and then they're gonna go to I don't know, law school or something. But it's just, it hurts. It does, because they're compromising, whether they're going to become, nobody has to become an alcoholic or an addict to realize this, but you're compromising with yourself, and you're just worth more than that, fuck it all, fuck everyone, fuck the element telling you that you can become something. Become yourself. You can do that yourself. You don't have to let your dreams or something depend on anyone's capability to see your worth. That's
And I think we as adults now have really a certain responsibility of making sure that these things are not normalized, and that we also make sure that people who do things like that are actually, they have to pay for it in a way.
We'll have to know the consequences, but I want to show the consequences, and my consequences was quite extreme, but I think if I can just, show or tell and make people see that this actually, you just take care of yourself. Goddamn, you have one life. I was lucky, but maybe you won't be. Just take care of yourself. You don't have to show off your boobs or your JJ to make people like you. You can just earn respect in another way.
Yeah, and you can get that attention in a different way, right? I think it's important also to remember that, when you are a teenager, like we talked about before, you obviously do have all these hormones, and you are going to start slowly. Some people earlier than others, but you are going to start at some point experimenting with sex, and that should be completely normal and natural. In my opinion. However, we need to make sure that these experiences are healthy experiences, preferably with other young people that are in the same age and the same level, right? Because another interesting thing is that a lot of scientists are talking about how your sexuality is very much rooted in your first sexual experiences. So as an adult, you will really be very connected to what has happened to you in the early stages of life. And I think that is, you're probably a very good example of that, because you have lived your very early sexual experiences with drug and being intoxicated, alcohol, and they have been bad experiences, at least in some cases. So it's completely understandable for you now to, have a really hard time of connecting with someone else and being in a happy place when it's about sex.
Yeah,
right? So I think it's very important that young people do experiment safely with sex, and that it's natural, and that they can feel that it's a good thing, and important that they get these good experiences and are not being exposed to older men who just want to take advantage of someone who might not be able to say no, or feel guilt, or feel that pressure, or whatever it is. And I think we as a society, we need to be better at also especially believing young women when they come and say that they have either been raped, or they've been pressured into something, or they had a bad experience. You need to believe them, and you need to take it seriously, and not always try and how do you say, defend the man, because obviously until guilty is proven, then you're not guilty. But still, you need to take it seriously when a woman says, I have been raped, or something has happened to me against my will. That is a serious matter, and statistics show that it is such a small percentage. It's ridiculous, the amount of false accusations. Although I know that men on internet, and also some women, they love to spread that false narrative of there are so many women that run around and accuse other men of rape. It is completely false. It is just not true. That's not what the statistics say. And it's, what do they get out of that? I mean, seriously, look at how difficult it is for you to talk about your experiences, right? So that's my opinion, that we as a society really can become better at believing women and take their accusations seriously, and at least give them the benefit of the doubt and investigate the cases. And
definitely, yeah,
right,
yeah, sure.
I mean, that's one thing. Anyways,
very important. Yeah.
Rikke, is there anything else you'd like to say here in the end, or otherwise I'm going to be wrapping up?
I don't think so. Maybe probably in 5 minutes I'm gonna be like,
I forgot. Oh, well, that's great. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, whether it being, maybe a writer, producer, or someone who finds your story interesting, or maybe it's a young girl or boy, it could be a guy as well who would like to
reach out.
Maybe reach out. And I guess you're on social media, or where can people find you?
Oh, Instagram is probably the easiest. That's Rikke Tiana, RIKKE TIANA. That's my name in there. There is
Perfect.
my email and stuff like that. So that's quite easy. And everyone is so free to write. Whether they're 9 years old and just or it's a big producer from LA. I don't just hit me up.
You accept it all.
Just come in here, let's talk. Yeah. I accept it all.
Great. That's great. Thank you so much, Rikke. I just again want to really applaud you and thank you for doing this talk with me today. I know it's very difficult to talk about these things. You do it with a smile, but I know that behind that there's a lot of hurt and a lot of dark things that you still work with. Yeah. And so I think it's so important that someone like you really just, come out and talk about it in such an honest way, so that people can really understand that behind these stories are humans with feelings, and that we don't always we don't always choose that path, you know. Sometimes it's a kind of a thing that happens and different situations and circumstances, and all of a sudden we find ourselves in a place where we don't really know how to get out of it. And we should be able to count, at least young people should be able to count on older people and adults to help them and not to take advantage of them. So thank you for not being ashamed of your story and of your background. I think that's super important. Let's try and change that narrative, right? That if something has happened to you in your past, you should definitely not be ashamed of it or feel any type of blame. And instead just being open like you and talk about it. And then let's focus on that great future of yours, now becoming an actress and, you know, having a great life and accomplishing all your goals. So thank you so much, Rikke. This has been really, really wonderful.
Thank you.